And welcome into the Tuesday edition, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Jake Lyman, Ian Safar here with you on this Tuesday morning. Rexrode remains out on vacation, and we still have no idea where he is. So maybe we'll find that out by the end of the week. Goutcation is in full effect. Jake Lyman, how we doing? What's going on?
Doing well. We were talking before. I feel better day two. Even not getting too much sleep last night, I do feel better.
Well, you were the anti-Connor Newt who got progressively worse as the week went on in terms of energy level.
Yeah, the Bizarro Connor Newt. Yeah, Oppo.
By the time, Bizarro Connor Newt. By the time Thursday rolled around, I looked over and I thought Connor Newt was dying in front of me in the producer's chair. I was like, wow, I don't think he's going to make it.
Well, we get Mr. Newt in some capacity for each of the next 2 days.
We do.
Enjoy that.
Well, I will be keeping tabs on Connor Newt and seeing if there's some progression here and if he's gotten a little bit more used to it.
That's true. That's true.
Because I kind of hope he has, and it's been pretty funny. We'll see what happens on that front. It's Far. How we doing?
Oh, doing great. Thanks. Ready to get rolling. Yeah, I'm out on Thursday, so you'll have a combination of Lyman and Connor.
The youngins coming in here.
Yeah.
I like it.
So keep them in line.
Well, let's see what we can do. Let's see what we can do on that front. We got a lot to get into on today's program. Adam Vingan will be with us at 6:30, and we will go through all things Predators with him as this continues to be a very important week with the Nashville Predators. So we'll do that later this hour at 6:30. Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports, who covers all things NFL for them, will be with us at 8:30. So we'll get into the Titans and the National Football League with him a little bit later in the program. Take your thoughts in the meantime. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. So I was texting with Stilly yesterday, and, we talk about random things. And then he said, I'm going to be talking about you on my show today. And I said, okay, that's fine. And so basically his stance yesterday, I said on the show yesterday, Jake, that I'll have some takes on the draft a little bit later this week as we get closer to Friday. And his stance is he thinks the draft is by far the most important part of this organization right now. And that's what he is. If he had to rate it on a scale of 10, he says like current trades to the current roster, like a 4 out of 10, what he cares about. I think he said, the rejuvenation of, Stamkos and Marchessault and all those guys. I think he said 5 out of 10 is what he cares about. But this draft, this pick at number 5, is 10 out of 10. And I understand that. I mean, I think we would all recognize that this is a massively important pick for the Predators coming up later this week. I would also argue that when it comes to this current setup that they've got with Andrew Brunette as head coach and Barry Trotz as general manager, yes, this draft pick is very important, particularly for Trotz. But if the actual on-ice product right now with the current NHL team doesn't get a whole lot better this year, I'm not sure that those guys are going to be around when this draft pick is actually making its debut here in Nashville. So that would be why I would argue everything about it's pretty darn important right now for the Predators.
Yeah, we talked about it yesterday that the Preds haven't had a chance to pick in the top 5 very often. So when you do, you have to get it right. And there's some good options that are going to be there at number 5. Again, you're not going to get a guy who's going to immediately plug and play into your lineup and be a massive force from day one. But you could find yourself a franchise type player at number 5 in the draft. I think that whether Barry Trotz and Andrew Brunette are still around when this guy makes his debut depends a lot on his team. This is a pretty big pick. You got to get this one right because the hope would be, with the current construction of the roster, that you're not picking in the top 5 next year. So this might be your only chance to get a franchise type player in the draft without having to trade a bunch of assets to get higher up towards the top of the draft.
Yeah. Look, I mean, it did not go the way anybody planned last year. And if you get this pick right and 6, 7, 8 years from now, we're talking about whoever they pick being their top line center and giving them a chance to compete with some of the best teams in the league and go head to head in some of those matchups, then this last year, if you're a Predators fan, that was really painful to go through and there was so much expectation and then they just fell flat on their face. It ends up becoming worth it at that point, right? Like if you draft that type of player in this draft, then you live with it down the road and say, you know what, that year living through it wasn't a whole lot of fun, but man, did it work out for us. If you end up with like an Alex Barkov, that's
Right.
it's working out pretty well for the Panthers right now. A couple of questions on that are how many of those type of guys are in this draft? Because depending on who you ask, you'll get some different answers on there. And if you do have an opportunity to take one of those guys that is going to end up being a significant, impactful, franchise level player, this is the moment where Barry Trotz, that front office, and that scouting staff, this is the moment where they've got to come through. Like, Barry Trotz talked about when he took the job, taking big swings and getting players that really changed the dynamic of this franchise. And obviously the opportunity here being with a top 5 pick is more than what they've typically gotten in their history of their franchise. So now it's on Barry Trotz and the scouting staff to deliver with this pick. And we'll see if they can do it.
Yeah, I think picking 3, 4, 5 in this draft is probably going to be some of the tougher spots because you do have the pressure of a top 5 pick and you really want to get it right and have this guy be one of the future pillars of your team. But it's not like there's a kind of shoe-in guy at any of these spots. It does feel like it's Schaefer and Misa 1 and 2. And then beyond that, there's kind of a next tier of players and you've got to pick the right one. So that's the struggle for Barry Trotz, is that you're right. He wants to take a swing, but this is such an important pick that you really want to make sure you're getting somebody that you feel good has not only a high ceiling, but a pretty high floor too, and is going to make an impact for this team.
So there's a lot of chatter as it relates to the Predators and really just in the draft in general right now about James Higgins. And we've talked about James Higgins on the show before. And at one point, basically at the beginning of this process last year, James Higgins was viewed to be the guy, the number 1 pick.
Yep.
Now, it wasn't Connor Bedard. It wasn't Connor McDavid. Like, people knew Connor McDavid was going to be the number 1 pick in his draft 5 years before he was drafted.
When he was 12 years old.
So it wasn't that. Like, James Higgins was never that type of a prospect. But he was, according to most people, the number 1 guy. And now a couple of things have happened since then. Number 1, there's been a lot of buzz about Matthew Schaefer, the defenseman, who I think is going to go number 1 this year to New York. His skating ability is off the charts. So that has been a big thing there. Michael Misa, as you mentioned, was awesome last year, and he kind of elevated his status. But I have seen some mock drafts that have Higgins falling to 5 to the Predators, and there have been a few in the last couple of days here, Jake, that have gotten going like 6 or 7, and it's like, really? Okay. What's going on here? Well, I was doing some digging, and Corey Pronman from The Athletic has come out with basically like a beginner's guide to the draft this morning, and one of the sections is titled, "Was it James Higgins supposed to be the top prospect this year?" And I'll just read you a kind of little bit of an excerpt of what he says here. He says, "Indeed, James Higgins was once widely regarded as the potential top pick in this year's draft. His freshman season at Boston College, however, didn't quite meet those lofty expectations despite still being very productive. He's a dynamic player with the skating, skill, and hockey sense of a premier NHL forward. He's on the smaller side, but his profile echoes similarities to players like Logan Cooley and Jack Hughes," which you would take either one of those guys if you're the Predators, "at the same age, although some scouts have concerns on whether he'll handle the NHL's physicality like the other 2 did. While he may no longer be the consensus top choice, Higgins still projects comfortably as a high-end NHL talent, likely to be selected very early." So that's what Corey Pronman had to say. I am really interested to see where he falls. And if this is just all, we talk about this with the NFL draft. I think it happens probably to a lesser degree, but it still happens in the NHL draft, of how much this time of year is there like actually smoke to some of these guys, quote unquote, falling, and how much of this is just noise generated by other teams around the draft wanting to position themselves as best as they possibly can.
It's
to get
lying
their guy.
season. Yeah. Again, to a lesser extent. I don't think in the NHL there's quite as many smoke screens, but it is lying season. And I wonder if maybe some of it with Higgins is, we talk about it in the NFL all the time, the prospect fatigue of the guy who was projected in the way too early mock draft to go number one usually doesn't, or starts to slip down mock drafts because the new exciting thing passes him up. But if James Higgins was a year ago considered to be good enough to go number one, I don't think there's a big reason. I mean, again, if his first year at Boston College wasn't great, but people still thought he had the talent to go number one overall.
And also, like, his first year at Boston College, I mean, it wasn't like unbelievable,
but it wasn't horrible.
But it wasn't bad. I mean, he had 37 points in 37 games as a true freshman. I mean, you're talking about a point per game player as a true freshman. So, you know, like it wasn't like he just totally laid an egg out there.
No.
Either. So, like the size stuff I get. I mean, I think I saw a listing, and you can take these listings with a grain of salt. Sometimes they're really accurate, and sometimes they're 20 pounds off. So who knows? But I think he's listed at 5'11", 177. So yeah, you'd like to see him bulk up. The 5'11" part, I mean, I'm not overly concerned about. I mean, there are plenty of guys in the NHL that are 5'11" that do okay for themselves. Like the physicality, I think you worry about more playoff time. Like, could he handle that? And that's what you got to determine if you're the Predators. But if the Predators walked away with James Higgins on Friday night as the number 5 pick, if it were me, I would sign up for that right now if I were a Predators fan. And I think he would immediately become your top prospect. And I think he's got a chance to be a really, really good player in the NHL. Do I think he would ever be Connor McDavid? No, I don't. But I think he's got a chance. You know, we've had Adam Kummelman on our show. We've had several people that have talked about some comps for him. And we heard Corey Pronman put it in this piece here. Like, he profiles kind of like Jack Hughes. And if he turned into Jack Hughes or anything close to it, you take that if you're the Predators.
And I think based on at least what I've seen, and text line, feel free to correct me, that feels like what most Predators fans are rooting for, is for James Higgins at 5.
I'd say that's fair.
That seems like the guy that everybody's going to be, hoping and praying that he doesn't go 3 and 4 to Chicago or to Utah. But there are other guys out there, but I do agree. I think Higgins is probably the most talented guy you could get at number 5. Maybe you might have to move up for him too. If that's the guy that Barry Trotz wants, maybe there's a deal to be made with Chicago to go get him at 3. But, I think that's all dependent on what Barry Trotz values. And if it's, kind of similar to what Mike Borgonzi talked about with the Titans draft, of there's a grouping of players that we'd be fine with at 5 rather than this is the guy, we have to have him. Let's go get him.
We'll continue the discussion on the importance of this Predators draft coming up on Friday. Who would you like to see the Predators select? Is James Higgins your guy? Is it someone else? We'll take your thoughts on that. 615-737-1025, our phone number. Adam Vingan will be with us at 6:30. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
What does number 5 do for you? Where do you head from there?
Well, we're in the process of all the meetings right now upstairs. I sat in with our scouts today. I feel that even at the moving back a couple spots in number 5, we're going to get a good player. I don't have any doubt about that. What it might do, depending on once we get the order, we're probably going to put a couple of plans into place. I'll have to make some phone calls and follow through with some of our plans. So. I think, when we get through with all the process, we have the combine coming up, as well as some interviews with the players, especially what we think is probably the guys will be in probably the top 10 for sure. We'll do a lot of background checking, do all that. And once we get that in order, we'll try to figure out what everybody else is doing and have a few plans in place to go in the direction we need.
That was Barry Trotz after the NHL draft lottery took place, discussing the number 5 overall pick for the Preds. By the way, Barry Trotz will be on with Stillman and Company later today. I want to say around 3:40. Is that what he said yesterday?
I can't remember the exact time.
I think it's around that time.
I think Trotz is speaking today, right?
Trotz is speaking at 3 o'clock today at Bridgestone Arena.
Okay, so yeah.
We will see exactly what time he ends up with Jared. I mean, the last time Trotz spoke at Bridgestone Arena, he had like a 35-minute opening statement. So it could be a minute.
He went for a full hour up there.
We'll see what happens with Barry Trotz. By the way, speaking of the NHL draft, I will be out there at Bridgestone Arena alongside Max Hers, and we'll have Hal Gill dropping by. We'll have Chris Mason dropping by, Lindsey Rowley, and a whole lot more on Friday night for the entirety of the first round, where our coverage is going to start at 6 o'clock here on 102.5 The Game. So tune in Friday night. We will be at Bridgestone Arena live from the floor at Bridgestone Arena. So looking forward to that coming up on Friday night for the NHL draft coverage. Let's head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in Adam in Portland to the program. Adam, good morning. Thank you for calling in.
Robbie, that's the only reason I'm going to be listening Friday night is because you're doing it, dude. And I know that's your element, and I want to see you in your element, bro. So
thank you, brother.
That's cool stuff. Hey, check it out, dude. So I do think I think the draft's important. It'd be stupid to say it's not. But if somebody's on the hot seat and you say this is the most important draft, well, we're not going to see this dude for like 3 or 4 years. Imagine where we're going to be in a new presidency in 3 or 4 years. You know what I'm saying? Like, so much is going to happen between now and then. So I think it's important to use your draft picks right now and get a player. Like, that's where I'm at with it, dude. Like, I don't know. I'm kind of like lost with this Predators team, because if you watch the Stanley Cup Finals, which I know you guys did, I'm sitting here going, both these teams would just smoke us. They might score 10 goals against us every game. Like, we're not even on the same level as these guys. So, yeah, I think, hey, if anybody could fall, it's like, hey, are you going to get Jalen Carter or are you going to get Caleb Farley? Why is the guy falling? I mean, if he's Jalen Carter and it's just like a minor issue that the top teams have a problem with, then whatever, take him. But I don't know, dude. Like, I'm just nervous about waiting on a guy for 3 years and saying, hey, they're on a 3-year hot seat. I think that sounds stupid.
Yeah. Thanks for calling. I appreciate it. Here's a couple things on that. Number one, look, to me, if you take the right guy at number 5, hopefully you're not waiting 3 years. I mean, look, I would say this. I'd say whoever they take at number 5, I would say at the moment it's probably unlikely that they are on this team next year or this season, I guess. I got to quit calling it next year because we're in next year. It's unlikely. It's not impossible. I mean, I don't know, maybe Anton Frundell is there at 5 and they draft him and he shows up to, rookie camp and immediately they're like, this guy's way too good for all these kids out here and he's ready to play in the NHL and they give him a shot. Who knows? Hagens, as we talked about in the last segment, if they draft him, I think he's probably going back to college next year and then maybe you could get him signed and he can play after his college season next year. We'll see. But I don't think that whoever they take at 5 is going to be available immediately. But I also don't think that whoever they take at 5, based on the option of players that I think will be there, I don't think any of those guys should take 3-4 years either. Like, I think they should be, right around the corner from being a part of this team. And then the question, as Adam said, is, all right, well, by the time they're here, is Andrew Brunette still here? Is Barry Trotz still the general manager? how do next season, how does that influence what Bill Haslam is thinking about where this is all headed? I mean, there's a lot that could change between now and then, to his point. As far as the draft picks themselves, Jake, here's how I would do it. 5, unless you can move up, I'm not moving off 5. Like 5 is, I'm not trading it. You just don't get top 5 picks around here very often, and there's not really a scenario
I do wonder
that I would trade that.
how big of a difference the 5 to 2 or 3 is this year.
Right.
Yeah, how much would it cost to move up?
And, how big of the drop off is there going to be in players? As you can see in the draft, a lot of these players are picked 1, 2, or 3.
Right.
5, for some reason, there seems to be a much bigger drop off than you would anticipate.
Yeah. I mean, the 5 is, if you go back and look through number 5 overall picks, I mean, you can find some really good players in there.
But the difference between
difference between 1 and 2 and 5, to your point, is it's astronomical in the NHL.
It's strange.
Yeah. It's very weird the way that works out. So, Jake, 5, I'm holding on to. The other 2 first-round picks, to Adam's point, I would be willing to wheel and deal a little bit, whether it's for other picks in the draft, other prospects, or for roster players in the NHL right now. I'd be willing to listen on all that if I'm Barry Trotz.
Yeah, and I think Barry has said that they've already got a lot of prospects. They've got so many picks, 5 in the top 55. Do you need to add 5 more young players? Maybe you can package a couple of those to either go get a higher pick or go get a player. I do want to mention Adam in Portland, Jalen Carter. I wouldn't call that a minor issue, by the way.
That's true.
But it hasn't impacted his NFL career. Just want to put that out there. But I do agree with you that, you've got 23 and 26 and then 34 early in the second round. I don't know if you need to make 3 picks in 11 selections. I think maybe there's a way to use those picks more efficiently to help the team now and maybe for the future.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Adam Vingan will join us coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Predators and what the next couple of weeks could look like as the Predators move forward to build through the draft and build for next year's team. All that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robbie Stanley, Jake Lyman, Ian Safar here with you, talking some Predators. And to help us do that, we head to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in our friend Adam Vingan to the program from DVD. Adam, good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning. As we know, Adam, a very important week and really a couple of weeks here for the Nashville Predators as we talk NHL draft and who knows what sort of trades are coming and NHL free agency coming up just after all of that. So I heard you guys talking on DVD yesterday about where they're at right now with their roster and the type of moves that Barry Trotz needs to be looking at. And you brought up the Capitals from a year ago. I thought it was a great example of kind of what they're doing right now, and that is taking some risks on guys that maybe haven't worked out in other places that are kind of in that mid-20s range, and they've really struck gold on some of those players, Dylan Strome obviously being one of those. So what do you make about where the Predators are right now with their roster, the type of moves that Barry Trotz should be looking for, and how attainable are some of those moves this offseason in your mind?
Well, if the Predators are committed to competing next season, I think that Barry Trotz should take a page out of the Capitals playbook. And the Capitals, by the way, are not the only team that has done this. I just think they've done it exceptionally well. I mean, they went from a bubble playoff team to the top team in the Eastern Conference in one season. And as you mentioned, Dylan Strome is an example. Pierre-Luc Dubois is an example. People thought Pierre-Luc Dubois was toxic because he bounced around the league so much. He signed an 8-year contract with the LA Kings, and 1 year into the deal, the Kings traded him to Washington. The Capitals, in doing their research, thought that Dubois was misused in Los Angeles. They thought the Kings did not put him in a position to succeed. If I recall correctly, he was playing a bottom six role for the Kings.
Yep.
They acquire him. They put him in the top six, and he increased his point total by nearly 30 points. And for as long as Dubois has been in the league, I believe at the time of the trade, he was only 25. So there is risk involved. I heard Jared talk about this a little bit yesterday, and his issue with it is, you can do this, but this is how you end up with Cody Glass. Sure, it's also how you end up with Sam Bennett, because Sam Bennett fit the same profile. I believe he was the number 4 overall pick in his draft. He did not pop in Calgary. He did not live up to expectations. The Panthers took a calculated risk, and look what happened. Sam Bennett has been outstanding for the Florida Panthers. Now, that is the best case scenario. But I do think that if the Predators are looking to stay competitive in the coming years, because for a lot of fans, this year is important. I know that there are fans who think that the future, the next few years, not this coming season, but the seasons after are more important. And I could argue either, but I think you look at players, like some of the players who would fit this profile who are available this offseason, rumored to be available. Marco Rossi of the Minnesota Wild, Bowen Byram and JJ Paterka of the Buffalo Sabres, Keandre Miller of the New York Rangers. I don't know if any of those players are necessarily a fit for the Predators. Unfortunately, both Keandre Miller and Bowen Byram are left shot defensemen, and they need a right shot defenseman. But we were talking about Marco Rossi on the show yesterday. Rossi was I believe the 9th overall pick in the draft 5 years ago, had a 60-point season this past season, but in the postseason, his ice time plummeted to around 11 minutes per game because John Hines didn't see Rossi as a fit against the bigger bodies of the Vegas Golden Knights in the first round. So there are red flags that come with these players. You're not getting a perfect player, as Willie said yesterday. But I think if the Predators are looking to stay competitive, this is what they should do, because they need that infusion of youth. You can draft James Higgins with the number 5 overall pick, but he's not going to be ready for at least a couple of years. I do think the Predators need an infusion of youth who can help them today.
Adam, big pick coming up on Friday night, Preds at number 5. And I was talking to Robby during one of the breaks about this, that it seems like universally Preds fans do not want the Predators to take Roger McQueen. What would your reaction be if that is the pick for the Predators on Friday night, even with some of the red flags that come with him?
I'm going to be honest with you, Jake. As much as I have started studying these players, I feel like I'm still not quite there enough to intelligently tell you why I wouldn't take Roger McQueen over somebody else. The NBA draft is around the corner. I am an avid college basketball fan. I will be sitting down and watching the NBA draft because I can tell you this rando from Iowa who went in the second round and know his game because I watch college basketball.
Cooper Bobo, Adam Vingan.
Yes, hey, there might be 3 Duke players in the top 10. Just saying.
Oh boy.
Don't forget Kon Knipple and Common Malawach, but I digress. I know that there are concerns about Roger McQueen. I was just reading Scott Wheeler's latest mock draft on The Athletic that published this morning. And by the way, programming note, Scott Wheeler of The Athletic will join DVD tomorrow in the first hour. Scott Wheeler has the Predators taking Porter Martone with the number 5 overall pick. And I think there might be Predators fans who don't want them to take a winger. If I recall correctly, Martone is a winger.
That is correct.
Versus taking a center like James Higgins, who has been linked to the Predators in these mock drafts. So I know this is a long-winded way of saying, Jake, I don't know the answer to that question because I haven't watched enough Roger McQueen to have an intelligent opinion on the matter.
Adam, as we're looking at this next couple of weeks here, we've seen Eric Halla come back in for the Predators. I said in the immediate aftermath of that move that this time of year, I try not to overreact because there's a lot that's coming and you want to see kind of what the whole picture looks like before you really formulate an opinion. But I guess my question here is, how active do you expect Barry Trotz to be? How active do you think Barry Trotz actually can be given where his roster is right now?
Well, after maxing out his credit card last summer in free agency, I think he might want to take a trip to Goodwill and not spend an exorbitant amount of money in free agency. This free agency class is pretty weak after the top names: Mitch Marner, Sam Bennett, Brad Marchand, Aaron Ekblad. There are a lot of interesting names out there. I think the Predators, after what they did last summer, should perhaps dial it back a little bit in free agency this year. I know, Robby, you like to tease me about this, but when I think about a player who can help the Predators today, and he is a player that I believe 98% of the audience is about to go, that can't be a real name, is Nick Perbix, Perbix.
Your
he
boy.
is a right-handed defenseman from the Tampa Bay Lightning, a no-frills type of player, has experience playing with the top defensemen for the Tampa Bay Lightning. I believe he played in a third pairing role for the Lightning this past season. Remember, they did bring back Ryan McDonough. But 2 seasons ago, I believe he was Victor Hedman's top partner for the Tampa Bay Lightning. So Nick Perbix has experience playing with top-of-the-line defensemen. So Nick Perbix next to Roman Josi sounds better to me than Justin Barron next to Roman Josi. I don't think Nick Perbix would break the bank. I think his cap hit on his recent contract was like 1.25, something along those lines. Again, 98% of our audience is going, who the hell is that? But sometimes, after what the Predators did in free agency last summer, I think they should take a more measured approach to how they go about it this summer.
Adam, yesterday the big news was Trevor Zegras, who has seemingly been on the trade block for a while, getting moved to the Flyers. Was that something that you thought the Predators should have been in on, especially for the price that the Flyers paid to get him?
It's a good question because you're right that Trevor Zegras has been perennially on the trade block now. And I was underwhelmed by the return. Clearly, the Ducks just had to take what they could get. Ryan Poehling is he's a guy. He's a veteran center and a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick. I think there might have been something else in there. But it was an underwhelming return. But this kind of goes back to my original point. Maybe not Trevor Zegras, but those are the types of players that the Predators should be eyeing. Daniel Briere, who is the general manager of the Philadelphia Flyers, he held a news conference yesterday and was asked about Zegras' drop in production, because he had those couple of big 60-point seasons, had to deal with some injuries, has been inconsistent ever since. And he said, quote, "That's why he was available. Top 6 talents are very, very rarely available. We felt that was worth the risk." And that's sort of what I was getting at on yesterday on the show, and in the first answer of this segment, is that players like that, players who have who their talent level is undeniable, but there's just something not working with the team they're currently on. Those are the types of players. So I don't know if I would have pursued Zegras specifically, but he fits the mold of the type of player I'm talking about.
Adam, last thing for you. You know, you've been around Roman Josi for a long time. You know, I've been around Roman Josi for a long time. We all know how great of a player that he's been. He is 35 years old now, dealt with another concussion at the end of last year. And of course, in the last week, we found out that he's been diagnosed with POTS. So, number one, I guess, how concerned are you about him, his availability moving forward? And how does all that impact kind of the way you should view your defense if you're Barry Trotz?
Yeah, I do think they need to have a contingency in place. I guess that if Roman Josi weren't available, Brady Shea would take the lion's share of the minutes. But yeah, it is at least a little concerning. I know the Predators said that he's progressing exceptionally well. Those were their words.
Yep.
But until you see him on the ice on a regular basis, I am going to be a little bit concerned, because there's always risk of a head injury when you play hockey, and he's dealt with a lot of them. I was talking with someone off the air the other day, and I was just sort of spitballing. I was like, I wonder if Roman Josi would be on a load management plan. Like, do they protect Josi? Do they maybe not let him play in both halves of a back-to-back, for example? Again, completely spitballing. I know it's a head injury versus a leg injury or a calf injury. But yeah, I do think it needs I think the Predators need to prepare for Josi not to play the full season. I mean, I don't know how this will affect a high-level athlete. When the news broke, we got some texts saying, "Oh, my friend has POTS," or "I know someone with POTS." And jokingly, I said, I tend to take those with a grain of salt. It's like when someone calls in and, someone ruptured, Tyrese Halliburton ruptured his Achilles. You might get a call today. I ruptured my Achilles when I was in high school. Well, it's a little bit different when you're Joey Joe Jr. Shabadoo from Murfreesboro versus Tyrese Halliburton tearing his Achilles. It's not the same thing. So I don't know if that, do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like, I don't know if the head injury plays a little bit of a different role. But I am curious how they go about maybe trying to protect him this season if this syndrome takes its toll.
Adam, it's a fun time of year. Going to be what I think is going to be a really busy time of year, maybe for the Predators, certainly around the league over the next few weeks. Appreciate so much you joining us this morning, and we will be listening at 11 o'clock.
Yep. Talk to everybody at 11. Thanks, guys.
Adam Vingan, our guest, will react to what Adam had to say. And there was a trade in the NHL that went down yesterday. Should the Predators have been involved? We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. This week's Nashville's best deal is Red's Hot Chicken. Red's Hot Chicken on West End is bringing the heat. Don't miss their hot chicken and waffles or the mac and cheese crunch wrap. Grab a $30 gift card for only $15 while supplies last at theGameNashville.com/deals. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Appreciate Adam Vingan for being with us in the last segment. Jake, there was a trade that went down yesterday in the NHL. I would imagine over the next few days, you will see several more, and we'll see if the Predators get involved. But the Philadelphia Flyers acquiring Trevor Zegras from the Anaheim Ducks in exchange for Ryan Poehling, a second-round pick coming up later this weekend in the NHL draft, and a 2026 fourth-round pick that was sent to Anaheim. So Zegras he's only 24. It feels like he's been around for a long time. He's 24 years old. We have had, over the course of the last couple of years here on this show, different discussions about Trevor Zegras and whether or not the Predators should be involved. Finally, he ends up getting traded. As you mentioned in the last segment with Adam, it feels like he's been on the trade block for a while. And finally, Philadelphia pulls the trigger. I'm with Adam, like the return, not especially overwhelming for the Ducks, particularly if you would have told, the Ducks 2 years ago that they were going to trade Trevor Zegras, and you would have said, hey, you're getting back Ryan Poehling, a second-round pick, and a fourth-round pick. They would have laughed at you and thought you were insane. But the last 2 years, you look at the way it's gone for Zegras, and there have been some injuries that have been involved as well. But in the 2023-24 season, he had 15 points in 31 games. And then this past year, he only played in 57 games, had 32 points, 12 goals, 20 assists. So the last 2 seasons have been a far cry from the first 2 when it looked like he was on his way to becoming a young superstar type player for Anaheim. So Philadelphia gets him. I'm interested to see what he looks like in Philadelphia. You heard Adam talk about the type of players that he would like to see Barry Trotz target this offseason. So I ask you, Jake, and who knows, maybe they were in the mix. There's no way for me to prove it. But should the Predators have been in the mix for Trevor Zegras and snatched him away from the Ducks?
I think they should have. Like Adam was saying, I think that is the kind of the central casting of what the Predators are looking for this year is maybe opportunities to buy low on guys who have a lot of talent. And Zegras would certainly qualify as that. You don't know if he is ever going to turn into a star, but like Adam was saying, the Panthers, that's kind of how they built this team, was buying low on some guys who maybe didn't work out in their first stop. And for the return that they got, I mean, with all the picks that the Predators have, you have to think that if the Predators were in the mix, they could have beat that. And again, I don't know if Zegras would have turned into a top 6 forward for this team, but I feel like it's worth a shot considering you didn't have to give up a first-round pick. You didn't have to give up any player of significant value. Maybe Barry Trotz was in on it, and maybe it got a little too rich for him, but I have to imagine that if he wanted to, the Predators certainly have the assets that could have beaten Ryan Poehling a second and a fourth.
Yeah, like I always in these discussions, somebody could probably write a book about NHL trades that have gone down and how many people were actually involved in those trades that either ultimately didn't end up pulling the trigger or the price was too much or whatever it is. Like, so I mean, I can't sit here and tell you that Barry Trotz wasn't involved here because maybe he was. Like he may have been in discussions with Anaheim about Zegras. Obviously, he didn't win out if he was involved. And you look at the price and it's not exorbitant. Now, look, I've also, I've talked about this. I've got some pretty heavy concerns on Zegras. Like there's a lot of injuries that he's dealing with early in his career. And then when he has been healthy the last 2 years, it has not looked the same. Now, maybe that's just as simple as he needs to get fully healthy and maybe he goes to a different place and he puts up 85 points next year. I have no idea. But there are some legitimate concerns about Zegras, which, by the way, as Briere mentioned yesterday, their GM, is why he's available. So you're not going to get just a flawless situation if you're trading for one of these guys. I mean, you bring up Florida. They got Sam Bennett after he really didn't work out in Calgary. They got Reinhart from Buffalo, and those two guys have ended up being, I mean, just unbelievably important for what they've done in Florida. So, I mean, that's kind of what you're looking for, and those are the extreme examples of what you're looking for if you're the Predators. But I saw it yesterday. I'm seeing it now on the text line of, man, Predators should have been in on Zegras. And look, Zegras has got I heard Willie talking about this yesterday, and I largely agree. Zegras has got a lot of flash to him, and he's made some highlight reel plays. There's nothing wrong with that. I still think there are a lot of parts of his game on like a nightly basis that have to get way better, way better. Like, I don't know that I would call him a winning player right now, and I'm interested to see if Philadelphia and Rick Tocchet can turn him into one.
And it is easy to say, let's just do what the Panthers have done.
Oh, yeah.
And
It's a lot harder to do
say, oh, okay, we can get these reclamation projects. And Zegras does fit the mold of what the Panthers did to get some of those players like Bennett and Reinhart. But every player is different. And maybe this is one where Barry Trotz just didn't think Zegras was going to be a fit and didn't think that he was going to be like those guys who could take the next step after a change of scenery. So we don't know how Barry thought about Trevor Zegras, but you're right. In terms of what the Predators probably can do to improve this roster, he was probably one of the better young gettable pieces out there that could have immediately made an impact on the ice.
Well, and he's in kind of the beginning stages of an age bracket that they just don't have a whole lot of right now. Like, he's 24, he'll be 25 next year. And the Predators are really light on impactful 25, 26, 27, 28-year-olds.
Yeah.
Like, if you go look at their roster, they just don't really have much of those guys. And the guys they do have that are in that age bracket, I don't know that I would say are impactful. Like, they're not who you're putting on the front of your ticket to sell tickets out, right? Like,
there's a big age gap.
Yeah, they're either
old guys
really
or
old
young guys.
or really young, and they're really light on kind of that middle ground there. And again, like, Zegras, he's on the very early stages of that. Like, you could still really classify him as a young guy if you wanted to, but it just kind of feels like he's been around forever at this point. Like one texter says, I feel if the Preds weren't involved, Trotz should be hitting the door pretty quick, because the evaluation of players just doesn't make sense. Doesn't trade Ryan O'Reilly, Big Mac, or Sissons at the deadline, and brings in another like player, talking about, I guess, Halla. I have no idea what his pencil plan is today, but this seems to be getting bad. You know, I'm not overly worried about the O'Reilly, McCarron, Sissons stuff, because all those guys can still be traded. Like, those, if things go poorly again next year, you can flip every one of those guys and get significant returns, especially for O'Reilly, but you can get, I think, a decent return for both of the other players as well. So I'm not really worried about that part of it, but it is, like I said it yesterday, and it's something Barry Trotz has got to change. They're on a run right now of moves that have just not worked out. They're on an absolute run, whether it's free agent moves, trades, whatever you want to slice it, that have just not worked out very well for them right now. And they got to start to flip that pretty soon.
We talked yesterday about Nashville sports as a whole, and it does feel right now that over and over, both the Titans and Preds are making splash moves, but none of them are actually panning out on the field or on the ice. Right. So, Barry has to end that streak, and maybe that comes with being a little bit more conservative in terms of who you go after. And if Zegras wasn't a guy that he thought they could bring in and immediately be an impact player, then, you have to trust that Barry has a plan, whether it's in pen or pencil.
James says, Barry said they were going to take big swings. He just took a strike right down Broadway. Zegras would have benefited from learning from Forsberg, Stamkos, O'Reilly, and Marchessault. Look, maybe, again, I can't tell you that he wasn't in on it. I don't know. It just didn't end up winning out at the end. Again, as I talked about with Adam, this is a really easy time of the year to just totally overreact. And I always do my best this time of year to say, all right, give me to about July the 9th. And then I can start to look and see what the whole picture looks like. It's a really hard thing to do, particularly when the Predators do what they did last year and that's sign everybody on July the 1st. Like, I understand the excitement level and all that. I'm interested to see, like honestly, that when they made the Eric Halla move, my initial thought was, all right, what else is coming? Like, it kind of seems like a preemptive move that sets up something else. And maybe I'm totally wrong about that. We'll see. But like that's why I'm always this time of year like, all right, let's just see how the next few days and weeks goes here.
And last year, everybody was high on every move Barry Trotz was making, and it didn't pan out. So you really never know until they actually start playing hockey. So you can have your immediate reactions to all the moves the Preds are going to make over the next couple weeks, but you have to understand that until we see what it actually looks like on the ice, we have no idea whether this is going to be a good offseason or a bad offseason.
Going to the next, I saw something on the Predators yesterday where they ranked dead last in the NHL, and it's a very important category. We will get into that coming up next. Also next hour, a team in the NFL that I think may be getting way too much love in the offseason. We'll get into all that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. We will have the Rob Rant coming up later this hour. Taking your thoughts in the meantime, 615-737-1025. We will get to here in just a few minutes a team in the NFL that I think Titans fans will have great interest in this year that may be getting a little bit too much love out there in the offseason, but we will get to that conversation here in just a few minutes. I was perusing around looking at some draft stuff yesterday, preparing for our draft show coming up on Friday, Jake, and I came across a piece at The Athletic that had basically nothing to do with the NHL draft, but I did find it unbelievably interesting, particularly as I read it. So we have talked about the center ice position, how important that is, and how much of a direct correlation that can be to winning in the NHL. So I saw this headline at the Athletic yesterday entitled, "Which NHL teams need to upgrade at center, ranking all 32 by current quality." So I was like, okay. I wonder where the Predators rank with their quality at center. You'll be shocked to discover that coming in at number 1 with the most center quality in the NHL is the Edmonton Oilers, who have Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl as their top 2 centermen. So
good.
that's hard to beat. You know, I'm going through here and I'm like, okay, so Colorado's at 4, and I think they get Dallas at 5. The Panthers are at 8, and they've got Sam Bennett. They're not really factoring him in technically because he's not signed an extension yet. So I would imagine they will move up once they get Sam Bennett back in the fold down in Florida. I'm going down, you know, Minnesota's at 17. I'm like, okay, so we're now into the late teens and Predators nowhere to be found. I get down to 23 and I'm like, oh, the Utah Mammoth coming in at number 23. Interesting. I have to get used to saying the Mammoth, but still no Predators. The Chicago Blackhawks coming in at 26th. And they basically just got Connor Bedard. I'm like, oh, okay. All righty. Finally, I get down to number 31. It's the Philadelphia Flyers. And I'm like, well, I haven't gotten to the Predators yet, which means they must be last. And they are. Nashville Predators coming in at number 32 on the rankings for the Athletic of quality at center. And here's the kind of little write-up they give. Quote, "Last season, Nashville's situation down the middle wasn't ideal, but it still made sense. All 4 of their centers fit neatly into their roles, but all 4 also came in on the lower end. This season, things have devolved. Ryan O'Reilly is now a high-end number 2 center playing on a first line, and behind him are 2 players who project as fourth liners, talking about Eric Halla, Colton Sissons." He said, so if you find yourself watching the Predators and wondering how a team with Philip Forsberg, Jonathan Marchessault, and Steven Stamkos can look so punchless, there's your answer, is what the write-up says. At number 32 out of 32, the Nashville Predators with their center depth. Jake, what do you make of that, and how much of that is kind of a direct reflection of where they are in the standings right now?
It's not ideal. The most important position on the ice, being the worst in the league at it, usually doesn't lead to a whole lot of success. I think, and again, I don't consider myself a hockey expert, but heading into last year, it seemed like Tommy Novak was the guy that they were banking on being one of their top 2 centers on the team and taking that next step. And now he's gone. So you're kind of in no man's land behind Ryan O'Reilly. And like the article said, Ryan O'Reilly's a good player, but is he a top line center at this point in his career? Probably not. So I think that's why we get all the text saying that center is the biggest need. And obviously, I think Barry Trotz knows that. But as we were talking about yesterday, it's hard to find a top line center out there because they usually don't get let go by other teams. So it's going to be a tough ask for Barry Trotz to find anybody to upgrade that position in a significant way this offseason.
Well, it's also, it goes back to how important this pick is at number 5, because potentially there's one of your answers to this problem is drafting one. I mean, look, Edmonton, they're at number 1. They drafted both McDavid and Draisaitl, right? You look at number 3 on the list, New Jersey. They drafted Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier. I mean, they were both really high picks. Obviously, Colorado drafted Nathan McKinnon. They're at number 4 on the list. You know, the interesting one is Vegas. They got Vegas at number 2 on this list. And, you know, they've got Eichel, Hurdle, and Carlson. Now, Eichel they got via trade. Hurdle they got via trade. And Carlson was via expansion draft. So it's a different situation with Vegas, just given when they came in the league. But they've done it a different way. Like they basically acquired a lot of their pieces. Yeah. And so maybe that's something you could try to emulate if you're the Predators at that point. But that does kind of show you there are some different ways to do it. I would say the Vegas way is way more difficult to do, but they've done it and they've got them at number 2 on this list. But the point of this is this, as much as anything else to me, kind of highlights why they are where they are and how difficult the project is in front of Barry Trotz. Of that position is just so important. And a lot of times people want to make the comparison in hockey, and they'll make the comparison between the quarterback in the NFL and the goalie in hockey. And I think that's an extremely flawed comparison.
Yep.
The goalie is very important. There's no doubt about it. But, I mean, go back and look through the last 25 years, and what you'll find is, yes, there are a lot of good goalies that have won Stanley Cups, and when you get to the playoffs, you need your goalie to play well. But what you'll also find is, man, there's a whole lot of Sidney Crosbys and those type of guys on the list down the middle who just you got to have it. Like, you got to have really good players at center, or for the most part, you're just not going to have much of a chance to win in the playoffs.
Yeah, I think if you're going, it's not a perfect comparison, obviously, but if you're going to make a comparison to quarterback, it has to be your top line center. Yeah. And Barry, when he first got hired, said that is the difference between being a Stanley Cup contender and not being a Stanley Cup contender is having an elite centerman. And the Preds don't have that right now. Not that there was there's no Bedard or McDavid in this draft, but you move back 3 or 2 spots in the draft lottery, so you don't get a chance to take one of those guys right off the top. So it does become tough. You have to be a little more creative if you're going to find one of those guys. And I just don't know if there's anybody who's going to be available to you. It does feel like whether it's in the next couple years or down the road, the Preds are going to have to be pretty bad to find one of those guys at some point, because that's just like quarterback, where the Titans, you couldn't pass up on Cam Ward, because how often do you pick at the top of the draft and get a chance to take a quarterback? I think the Preds eventually are going to have to be in that position where you're picking high, but you can get that elite center that you've been missing for years.
615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. Coming up next, there's a team in the NFL that I think people may be going a little overboard with, and I'll explain why coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063 The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. So every offseason, Jake, I feel like there's a team in the NFL that gets a whole lot of love. And sometimes it's deservedly so. Sometimes it works out. Sometimes maybe it's a little overhyped. And I'm very interested to see if the team that I have in mind this year for this can actually live up to it or not. And I am talking about Mike Vrabel's beloved New England Patriots. I was looking around last night because we've talked a lot about the AFC South and what the win totals could look like and all those things. And we don't expect the AFC South overall to be a very competitive division. Like I'm looking on FanDuel Sportsbook, and if you wanted to take the over on the Titans at 5.5 wins, the odds are plus 110, or excuse me, minus 130. And if you want to go under 5.5, it's plus 110, which means that basically Vegas thinks the Titans are going to be right around the 5 or 6 win mark when you really break it down. I was looking just for the sake of my own curiosity at New England, and the over-under at 7.5 for them. If you go over, which means 8 wins, it's minus 160. And under 7.5 is plus 135, which means that Vegas thinks that the Patriots are going to end up right around 8 wins. The jump to get to 8 wins in the NFL is really not a lot. Like, we see people do that. So I'm not sitting here saying that the Patriots in Vrabel's first year can't make a jump to 8 wins, because it's honestly, we saw it with the Titans even back 10 years ago when they were bad. Getting from 2 or 3 wins in the NFL to 8 or 9 happens more than you think, okay? So it does happen. But some of the conversation around the Patriots this offseason, like I've seen some people thinking they're going to make the playoffs. I've seen some people thinking that, Drake May is just going to go off this year. And that, I guess that's kind of where my confusion starts. I like Drake May. I think Drake May is going to end up being a pretty good quarterback and a pretty good player in the NFL. I do think there has been an overinflation of what we saw from Drake May last year. And I think we've seen that play out in the way that they view the Patriots this year. I thought Drake May last year was fine. Like, as a rookie, particularly given the lack of having basically anything around him, he was good. He was fine. I think he ended up going 3-9 as the starter. 2,276 yards, 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. He's fine. Like, he was fine last year. But the way that some people are talking about him and the jump that they expect him to take, I'm still looking at that roster in New England. And I know they've got Stephon Diggs, and when he's not out there on the boat, maybe he can help you significantly on the field. But I look at their offense, I'm like, man, they're still pretty light at wide receiver. They've revamped their offensive line a little bit. We'll see. I just look at their skill position right now. I'm like, I still think this has a chance to be a rough-looking offense out there. And I don't know that I can just assume, like everybody else seems to be, that the Patriots are going to be in like that 9-win range competing for a playoff spot.
I do look at their schedule, and it's really easy. There's a lot of winnable games on this schedule.
Well, you got the Jets twice in there,
and
they're no clue what the Dolphins are going to be.
They're playing a 4th place schedule, so they get the Titans and the Browns, and you're playing the NFC South, which is probably the easiest division you could face on the other side. Not to say that I think they are going to be a playoff team this year, but you can see the schedule does set up favorably for them. I think a lot of this is just a lot of people just don't realize why Mike Vrabel got fired here. They only remember the playoff game against the Patriots where he outsmarted Bill Belichick with the rules. And, he had them as the number 1 seed with Ryan Tannehill as his quarterback, which is what everybody will say. But he also lost 18 of his last 24 games here. It was not pretty at the end. And you're right. I don't know if this Patriots roster is set up to be a playoff team this year. I think they're going to be better, but they're starting Will Campbell at left tackle. Will Campbell, I mean, at least from everything I saw, was kind of in the Peter Skoronski territory of, yeah, he might be able to play tackle, but he's probably going to be better at guard. Is he going to be able to immediately jump in and be an above average left tackle for Drake May? I don't think that's just guaranteed.
Well, and here's the other thing. Like, look, I think Vrabel is a good coach, and I've been on record. I thought that they made a mistake here when they fired Vrabel, but I mean that's water under the bridge at this point. We'll see. But Vrabel also, like, he's not developed a quarterback yet, right? Like, I understand he took over with the Titans, and Marcus was already 3 years deep into his career at that point. And maybe at that point, it just wasn't salvageable. Like, I don't put the failure of Marcus Mariota on Vrabel.
No.
And then Tannehill comes in. You don't have to develop Tannehill. He's been in the league for that time. So you go through your run of success. And then what you have to work with after that was Malik Willis and Will Levis. So it's not like Vrabel has had, some laundry list of great quarterbacks that he's had the opportunity to try to develop. So I say he hasn't developed a quarterback. Maybe it's because he's had almost no opportunity to do it based on who he's had to this point. But I also would like to see him, actually do it before we just assume that it's going to happen with Drake May.
Yeah, I like Mike Vrabel, and I agree with you. I think the Titans probably shouldn't have fired him. I think he is a good coach, but I think the people are kind of jumping the shark here with this. I mean, he inherited a team that had just won a playoff game when he came to the Titans.
Correct.
And yeah, he took them to the next step, got them to the AFC Championship game, won the division a couple of times. But this is a Patriots team that if Joe Milton hadn't beaten the Bills backups, they would have been the worst team in the NFL last year.
Correct. Yeah.
That he's taking over. And they did make changes. Like they brought in.
They had a heck of an offseason.
They brought in Milton Williams and, Harold Landry on the defensive line and Stephon Diggs, who I don't know how much you can expect from Stephon
I really
Diggs.
don't either.
He's coming off a torn ACL and really wasn't extremely productive his last couple of seasons. So I'm not expecting them to immediately compete with the Bills. I think Buffalo was going to run away with that division. I think they'll be better. I think they'll be a 6-7 win team. Maybe you could see them get to 8 if things go well, and especially with the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, all that in the schedule, you're right. It's a great point. I mean, some of the conversation around them this offseason, I'm like, are we talking about the Patriots or are we talking about the Chiefs? Like, what's going like? There's Drake May is going to throw for 4,500 yards this year, and that's like, well, is he?
There should be way
Who's
more
he throwing
hype
to
around the AFC West teams, the Broncos and the Chargers, than the Patriots, because the Broncos, Bo Nix had a better rookie season than Drake May did.
Yeah, he was good.
Got him to the playoffs, and Sean Payton is a much more proven head coach than Mike Vrabel.
That is correct.
Sean Payton's won a Super Bowl. Mike Vrabel, I think, gets a lot of the hype because he's the football guy, and you get all the stories of him and, all the stuff that he does in the locker room. Like, it's great. But Sean Payton is an actual head coach who's won a Super Bowl, and he's got a quarterback who just took him to the playoffs in year one. I think the hype that's going to the Patriots should be going to the Broncos, who also have one of the best defenses in football.
Let's head to our 1025 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Welcome in our buddy Mark in Nashville. Mark, good morning. How we doing?
Yeah, how you doing, Robby?
We're good, man.
What's up, Joe? What's up, Jake from State Farm? So, yeah, how y'all doing? Hey, Robby, I think a lot of the hype with the Patriots is a lot of it's because of Josh McDaniels. He is one of the premier offensive OCs in football, and that's the perfect guy to develop Drake May and get him to be that franchise guy that they're looking for. I think that's where the hype comes from. I don't know if they'll get 7, 8 wins this year, but Vrabel's in a better situation than way better situation than he was with the Titans. Because if you remember, his OCs at the Titans wasn't that great, but he's got a great Super Bowl winning OC that's working for him this year with Josh McDaniels. I don't know what Diggs is going to do. Like Jake said, he's coming off an ACL injury. They're going to probably have to show up at wide receiver room a little bit. But I think they're going to be a good team down the road. And I think Drake May will be a great quarterback down the road. But, yeah, he's in a better situation than he was at the Titans because now he's got that franchise guy and the OC that can get him over the top. But hey, man, y'all have a good day and stuff.
Thank you,
I
Mark.
just wanted to say that.
I appreciate
We'll
you,
see
man.
y'all later. All right.
I mean, again, I like Drake May.
Me too.
So let me make that clear. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to trash Drake May. I like him. I think he's going to end up being a good quarterback. But I think as time has gone on here, what he actually did last year has been a little overinflated with some of the conversation around the Predators, the Patriots.
The Drake May, I think he is going to be a franchise quarterback, but how many quarterbacks have we seen have a decent rookie year and then just not be able to improve on it?
Yes.
So the expectation that he is immediately going to jump into the tier, not the tier of Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Jackson, but the next tier with Herbert and that kind of a group in the AFC, Herbert, Stroud. I don't know if you can just immediately assume that. I would probably say Drake May is right around the 10th best quarterback in the AFC right now heading into the season. I don't know if he's immediately going to make a jump and be the 5th by the end of the year, which is probably what you need him to be if you're going to be a playoff team with that roster.
615-737-1025, our phone number. A lot of your thoughts to get to on this. We'll do that coming up next. Are the Patriots and Mike Vrabel getting a little bit too much hype heading into his first year? Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Stefan Diggs has gotten a lot of traction in the last 24 hours or so. He's on a boat, having a good time, but the question comes in as to a certain substance that people are guessing what is and isn't. Is this something that the team has to look into?
Well, it's something that we're aware of, and obviously we want to make great decisions on and off the field. And we're hoping that with our time here on the field today, and that when we don't have a script and we're on the call-up periods, that we're making great decisions. And so the message will be the same for all our players, that we're trying to make great decisions, and any conversations that I've had with Stefan will remain between him and I and the club.
Have you talked to him since the video?
I talk to our players every single day, the ones that are here and the ones that aren't.
Are you expecting him to practice today, Mike?
Not if he's not here.
So he's not here.
You guys will find out in a minute.
Man, if you could just hand script Ian a Mike Vrabel press conference setting right there.
He's in true form already.
He's in it, baby. God, I remember that a couple weeks ago.
Not if he's not here.
It's like, man, I miss that guy sometimes. It's good stuff there from Vrabel.
He's like, we have the off-season plan, and this is voluntary. And if the players are here, we'll coach them. It's just like
exactly.
I mean,
if the players are here, they will be coached.
We were very close to don't do stupid bleep that hurts the team.
Yes. Coach better, play better. I will be very fascinated to see how all that goes in year one with Mike Vrabel.
Don't do dumb that hurt the team.
There we go.
Never gets old. Skyler on the text line says, why the hell is Vrabel starting Will Campbell at left tackle? We never even got to see if Skoronski could, and had to watch Dennis Daly, Andre Dillard, and Jalen Duncan over there. It is a fair question.
It is a fair question because, at least as far as I've seen, they both have, in terms of NFL left tackle, they both have the T-Rex arms a little bit, which is fine. You can be a very good offensive lineman with short arms, but usually that's not great to be a left tackle.
I mean, look, as the draft process went on, I think we heard a lot about Campbell, the arm length, whether or not he'd be better suited playing guard. And, Vrabel talked about it. They clearly feel like he's a tackle. So we'll see, depending on who you asked in the draft process. Most thought he was a tackle too. I do understand if you're Skyler or a Titans fan out there and is like, you never even tried Skoronski over at left tackle throughout that run where you've got all this other stuff you're throwing out there and Dennis Daly and Andre Dillard. So I get it. It's a fascinating kind of difference there when you're talking about the Will Campbell part of this. Ed on the text line says, people forgetting Vrabel's first year, he inherited a playoff team here. This Patriots team is a far cry from a playoff team. They'll be better, but we haven't seen Vrabel inherit a last place team. So let's see what happens. And then it also says he thinks the Raiders will sneak up on teams this year. The Patriots part of this is interesting because I also look at their division, and Buffalo clearly is the best team. I have no idea what the Miami Dolphins are going to be. Absolutely none. Number one, is Tua going to stay healthy? Because if he doesn't, we've seen it. They're screwed.
The answer is likely no.
And if he does, even if he stays healthy, how good are they? Tyreek Hill is another year older. Jalen, I still love the Hill and Waddle combo there. And now they get NWI, so some more touchdowns are coming that way.
That's true.
But I still, even if they're healthy, I don't know how good the Dolphins are. I would assume that they're better than the Patriots if they're completely healthy. And then there's the Jets.
I think it's pretty safe to assume, and there's surprises every year in the NFL, but I would feel like it's a pretty safe bet to go Bills are going to win that division, Jets are going to finish last, and then some combination of Patriots and Dolphins in the middle.
I think that's fair.
Could be completely wrong because injuries and unexpected stuff happens all the time when we get to football season, but that feels pretty safe, which in most divisions, I don't know if you can make that kind of distinction of one team's going to finish first, one's going to finish last, and then the other two are going to be kind of on the wild card bubble.
Even the Titans division. I feel pretty good about Houston winning it. All right.
Right. Me too.
2 through 4, you could tell me any combination of 2 through 4.
For sure.
And I would say, yeah, okay. I could see that. Look, if Cam Ward's really good, could the Titans be in second in their division? Yeah, I think they could. could the Titans also, who I think still have just clear big holes on their roster, could they be dead last again? And we're talking about a 4-13 football team.
Yep.
Yeah, we could be talking about that too.
I think Corey Curtis said it best yesterday that out of those three, it's whoever gets the best quarterback play is probably going to be the team behind Houston, which I wouldn't guess that 2 AFC South teams are going to make the playoffs this year.
I wouldn't either.
But one of those 3 teams could end up 8-9. And I think it does depend on who gets the best quarterback play. Trevor Lawrence, is there more growth to be had for Trevor Lawrence now that he's got Brian Thomas Jr. in his second year and Travis Hunter? Who knows how much offense he's going to play, but he should be some sort of weapon for them. And then whatever's going on in Indy with Daniel Jones, I think I saw yesterday taking a significant lead for the quarterback 1 position over Anthony Richardson, which has to make Indy fans feel great that Daniel Jones is going to start over their 4th overall pick from a few years back. So it is about quarterback play. I think the rosters are all, give or take a little bit on all 3 of them, but they're all kind of the same. It's going to be about whoever's quarterback either takes the first step in terms of Cam Ward or takes the next step for the other options there.
Ian, are you a believer in the Mike Vrabel-led Patriots this year?
There will be an improvement. I do believe that. How much? I will have to see about that. And there's plenty of, instances where you go, I'd be surprised if they went worst to first in that division.
That's true.
Given where, Buffalo. But I don't think I do think they'll be better. I'm not buying any playoff hype. I don't think yet. No.
I'm trying to see, according to the odds, where they rank just to make the playoffs. So you've got in the AFC. So you got Buffalo and Baltimore, who are the 2 favorites in the AFC, and then Kansas City. So there's 3 right there. Cincinnati's 4th, which I think is debatable, but I get why they're 4th because of their quarterback. Houston is 5th. The Chargers are 6th. The Broncos are 7th. And then the Steelers are 8th. Patriots at 9th. So right now, they're the 9th.
I think that's fair.
9th in the AFC.
Yeah. There's always a team, that
which
surprises.
Is in front of every other AFC South team not named Houston, by the way.
So I would kind of be surprised if it were the Patriots, but there's always a team, that sneaks in. Someone has a bad schedule, and that fits them as a last place schedule. A quarterback who could maybe make a jump. Maybe McDaniels could be a good thing for him. That's one thing that he has that Vrabel did not have here. Well, I guess he did with Arthur Smith, and look how well they did. And it kind of went off the rails when they lost him. So maybe if he can get the OC solidified, someone who knows what they're doing, and he can be more of that hands off and let them run that room, maybe he can, turn it around quicker than we think.
I mean, the one thing I would say on the McDaniels front is McDaniels sure looked like a really good OC when he had Tom Brady as his quarterback.
Yeah.
And then when he hasn't had Tom Brady as his quarterback, it's been hit or miss. Mac Jones, there was some success there early on. And then for whatever reason, they just kind of nuked all that going. And then Bill Belichick, when McDaniels was gone, decided to basically make Matt Patricia the offensive coordinator, which not a very good decision.
Matt Patricia and Joe Judge.
Yeah, really
Don't
good
forget
combo
that.
there.
Yeah, that's Vrabel did the same thing when they lost Arthur Smith. Kind of went through the whole Downing, and then was it Kelly?
Yeah, it was all internal hires. He never made an outside hire at offensive coordinator after LaFleur left.
So I don't know. Maybe if he could get the OC figured out, it might be key. Maybe McDaniels can turn it around. We'll see.
By the way, if you're wondering, there are 2 teams in the AFC that have worse playoff odds than the Tennessee Titans. Can you name them?
Browns.
That is correct. They are the worst odds in the league at plus 820.
Raiders.
No. The New York Jets.
Oh, right. Jets. Yeah.
The Raiders are just in front of the Titans.
Just in front.
Just in front of the Titans. Titans have plus, according to FanDuel Sportsbook, plus 440 to make the playoffs. And the Raiders are the team in front of them at plus 310.
I mean, I hate to bring it up, but the AFC East could be up for grabs with one injury in Buffalo.
That's very true.
One bad injury in Buffalo, and you can't count on the Jets. You can't count on the Dolphins. And all of a sudden, It's anybody's
It
game.
is wide
All
open.
of a sudden, Vrabel's riding off into the sunset with the division championship in his first year.
Patriots are definitely not in that tier of Titans, Jets, Raiders, Browns, Jaguars. I'd put them right there with the Steelers and Dolphins.
But I do think their roster needs a lot of work.
I agree.
You know,
Particularly on offense.
You
Yeah.
can't fix it in one offseason, as we learned last
they
year.
might have the quarterback long term, so they think, but on offense, the rest of their skill stuff is not good.
We'll have the Rob Rant coming up next. Get back into the Predators in the 8 o'clock hour. Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports, who covers all things NFL, will be with us at 8:30 as well. All that coming up on the program. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Don't make me angry.
Sometimes you have to tell someone to pound sand.
You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is the Rob Rant. Now on Robby and Rexrode.
I go to Starbucks. I go to Starbucks. I get a venti, grab the pike. So I'm doing that.
I don't know that I have especially pointy nipples.
Did you think people would melt down and react when you said asparagus like they did?
No, I ain't think they. I think I sound as regular to where I'm from.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
The hell with Lee Corso!
It hurts badder than whatever you can imagine. But the good thing is losing's really not in my vocabulary.
Thielen, that's my guy, man. He swear he know exactly what I'm saying. Sometimes I can see it on his face. He have a look like, I don't know what you just said, but he still be like, oh yeah, okay.
That way you can have plenty of pockets for loose mints. Just get you some cargo shorts out. Did you offer Feinbaum a mint?
I did not, but that's a
Hey,
great
Paul,
point.
I got something for you. It is that time of the day. Time for the Rob Rant. And by the way, quick aside before I get going here. If there was ever a trade that a team in this city could make that would make me happy, bring me Xavier Legette from the Carolina Panthers and put him on the Tennessee
Hey,
Titans.
the Titans need some wide receiver help.
That was TD's guy 2 years ago.
Man, I love that guy.
Problem is Panthers have no wide receivers either,
That is
especially
also
if they get rid of Leggett.
Bring me Xavier Legette. Before he's done,
he'd fit right
he
in.
needs to be a Tennessee Titan at some point. And that's basically all our show will talk about at that point is Xavier Legette.
Just play his
That's my
clips
vow to you.
for 3 hours.
So we did not touch on this yesterday, but I feel like it's worth bringing up today. And it goes into a theme that I've talked about at different points for the last couple of years, which is baseball umpires in particular are way too soft. And we saw it again on Sunday in the national championship game between Coastal Carolina and LSU. So Coastal Carolina head coach, for those who missed it, Kevin Schnall, and their first base coach got kicked out of the game in the national championship series in the first inning. So when I first saw this, Jake, I thought, oh God, like what did he say? Like he must have said something really bad. And then you go back and you watch kind of the replay of the exchange, and there's microphones now that have picked this up. So they started yelling about balls and strikes, which I understand by the letter of the law, you're not supposed to do. It also happens about 75 times per game, and nobody ever makes a huge deal of it. You warn the coaches at some point, and then that's usually the end of it. So in a championship setting here in the College World Series final, in the first inning, these two coaches get thrown out of the game. And you look back at the footage that's come out from the dugout, and Schnall, in the exchange with the broadcast with the umpire, he says, quote, "You missed 3 pitches." That's what he said. You can see it. That's what he said. You missed 3 pitches. That's all he said. And he got thrown out of the game. And he went on this long diatribe about it. If you missed it after the game, I would encourage you to check it out. He talked about, it was kind of Mike Gundy vibes. He talked about being a grown man and being 48 years old and how he shouldn't be shooed away by another grown man. It was very entertaining, the follow-up press conference that he put out there. But I just could not believe that the umpire in this situation cannot recognize the surrounding that he's in and throws the coaches out in the national championship series in the first inning for saying you missed 3 pitches. With like no profanity, nothing else. That's all he said. It's a huge problem in baseball. And it's become, as more people watch college baseball, I think that they're probably a little bit more sensitive to it than the major league umpires are. Although there are some major league umpires that really strive to make themselves the center of attention out there. I thought the inability to have a little bit of restraint and poise as an umpire here, which other referees in other sports have talked about. And, I bring up the NHL example a lot, but, I've talked with a lot of refs in the NHL that just know there's an understanding that emotions are running a little bit higher in the playoffs. And you have to have a little bit more slack involved with what you're willing to put up with if you're some of these referees. Again, I'm not advocating for it to just be open season on the umpires, but you got to say a little bit more than you missed 3 pitches, in my opinion, to be thrown out of the national championship game in the first inning. I'm sorry.
Yeah, got to have a little bit of feel for what's going on. And the first inning to toss him for that. And I get it. You watch the whole video and he told him to go back to his dugout, warned both him and the first base coach, and they didn't go back, and then he tossed him. That's fine in a normal game. But again, this is an elimination game in the national championship. And Coastal, that ended up being the last game of their season. They lose, and LSU wins the title. It's tough. And if you haven't seen the video, I encourage you to watch it, if for no other reason than to see one of the other umpires trip over his own feet.
And then get embarrassed.
Do a somersault.
Yeah.
It was hilarious because it did look at first like Schnall might have kind of pushed him, but then you look at the replay and no, he just tumbled. And I believe Schnall said, I'm not responsible for another man's lack of athleticism.
Yeah, it was a great, I mean, he did not hold back in his post-game press conference comments on that, which look, I get it. Like at some point there's got to be some real accountability here on the umpires front. They can't continue to just make themselves the center of attention. And for whatever reason, I just feel this is a huge problem in baseball. And look, this is probably a conversation for another day because I know that the baseball purists out there get mad when people start talking about this. But honestly, in 2025, there's really no reason for an umpire behind the plate to be calling balls and strikes. We have the technology to call balls and strikes without the umpire. Again, that's a conversation for a different day. And I understand that there's the history of the game and all that stuff, but it's got to be better than it's been if this is going to continue.
I don't love the automatic ball strike system. They've experimented with this in AAA, but there is no reason the challenge system shouldn't be implemented. They used it in spring training. It was great. Everybody loved it, and they got rid of it. It better be in next year because all it does is make sure that the blatant misses are rectified.
Correct. Yeah.
And it's the umpires. I understand you don't want to have just the computer calling all of them because there's going to be some really weird looking strike calls when you do that of pitcher just completely misses his spot, but it clipped the edge of the zone and it's called a strike. I don't think that's the right idea, but the challenge system seems like a no-brainer. And it is across baseball, maybe more in college, but in the MLB, some of these umpires are just too soft too. I think it was the Cubs a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
Ian Happ just turned around and goes, you're having a really bad day.
Yeah, I talked about that at the time.
And he got tossed.
It's just ridiculous.
I don't like how when they do get tossed, the umpire who has tossed the guy
just runs away,
kind of walks away
Yeah.
and stands there by himself. And the other umps have to come in, surround the player and the coach, and like buffer him away from the thing. And he's arguing and he's yelling. And the other ump's like, well, I don't know what he said. I don't know. It's like an excuse for him to like not get an explanation of what went down other than the guy just lost his cool. You know, like at least sit there and explain yourself and take the heat from the guy you just tossed and get it out of the way, like argue about it. Instead, the ump just walks away, starts writing it in his book. The other ump's like, well, I don't know what was said. I don't know. And like it's just like, you know, at least if you're going to toss the guy, sit there and take it.
I do miss the just complete unhinged
meltdowns.
Yeah, where they're screaming at each other.
Crawling on the ground and like acting like you're throwing the grenade.
Yeah.
It's good stuff.
I mean, Javi Baez,
Chuck
who
the
we
base.
were just talking about, he had one a couple weeks ago where he had to be held back by the third base coach and one of his teammates. So I do miss those a little bit. Not that I'm encouraging guys getting in fights, but when the umpire and the manager are like an inch from each other's face,
It's
just
pretty
screaming
awesome.
at each other, it's a part of baseball. It's great.
Josh from Murfreesboro points this out on the text line, and I did see this the other day. CB Buckner, an umpire in Major League Baseball who's been around for a while, he missed 28 pitches behind the plate the other day. You know, they do the 28.
The baseball, the ump scorecards, that is one of the best accounts on Twitter.
Yes.
Because I will be watching a Tigers game or something like that and realizing how horrible of a day he's having. I'm like, I cannot wait to see this umpire scorecard tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it was the Reds and the Cardinals in St. Louis, and CB Buckner missed 28 ball strike calls behind the plate. 28 is a pretty high number. Don't need to be missing 28.
I mean, you get what, probably 250 pitches per game, right around
Yeah, right
there.
around there. Yeah.
And so that means 1 out of every 10 pitches you're getting wrong.
Yeah.
Like that may be a B plus, A minus on a test, but you're not looking for that. You got to be 97% plus to be an average umpire at the MLB level.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. We will get back into the Predators and the NHL draft coming up next. And later in the program, we'll be joined by Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports talking all things Titans and NFL. All that coming up. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Final hour, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Robbie Stanley, Jake Lyman, Ian Safar here with you on this Tuesday morning. Frank Schwab from Yahoo will be with us a little bit later in the program at 8:30, and we will get into the Titans and NFL headlines with him. So looking forward to that. The NHL draft is coming up later this week, and we will have Barry Trotz on with Jared later this afternoon. I will be hosting, along with Max Hers, a draft show coming up on Friday night starting at 6 o'clock, live from Bridgestone Arena. So we are very much looking forward to the draft coming up later this week. Tune in with us on Friday night at 6 o'clock as the Predators at the moment have 3 picks in the first round, including at number 5. And Jake, we've had a lot of different thoughts and discussion points today from Predators fans on what they'd like to see happen at pick number 5 and the importance of this draft coming up. You know, I heard Jared talking about it yesterday, and he talked about, you know, this draft, if he had to rank it in terms of importance of what he cares about right now, like the team next year and how they do is a 4 or 5 out of 10, and this draft is a 10 out of 10. I don't know that I necessarily get there, but I understand the point of the Predators just have not had very many top 5 picks in the history of their franchise, and this is an opportunity to land a potential franchise-changing player. Now, we'll see if where they're picking at number 5 actually has that in the cards or not, and if one of those guys ends up being a franchise changing player like an Alex Barkov or somebody like that, we'll see. But no doubt about it, whoever the Predators select at number 5, we are immediately going to view as that kind of top level prospect in their organization. And we've talked about this several times. They're whatever draft guru you want to consult, and Adam Vingan joined us earlier. They'll have Scott Wheeler on their show tomorrow from The Athletic. They've talked about the Predators pipeline. They've got a good pipeline. They've got some good prospects. Obviously, they got a lot of picks coming up. They don't really have an elite player in their pipeline. So is this a chance where Barry Trotz and his staff are going to get an elite player? A lot of conversation about James Higgins, which we went through earlier in the show. I'm really interested, Jake, to see if he's there at number 5. And if he is, are the Predators dead set on Higgins, or if somebody else is available, whether it's Frondell or McQueen or whoever, is there a decision that Barry Trotz is going to have to make, and what sort of contingencies have they gone through heading into all that?
Yeah, I just saw Alex Doherty put out an article too, saying basically if James Higgins is sitting there at 5, it should be a no-brainer for the Preds. And man, we could have a meltdown of epic proportions if Higgins is on the board and the Preds don't take him, which with how young these guys are coming out, and again, this isn't the NFL draft where you kind of know what a guy's going to be right off the bat for your team. These guys are still a couple of years away. So there shouldn't be any meltdown, because it's kind of like the MLB draft where, yeah, you might have an idea, and baseball is getting a little closer to NBA and NFL because like half of the top 10 from last year's draft are already playing big league baseball, but it's still the same as you're not getting a ready-made product. And the guy you take at 5 on Friday, it may not be the one guy you want, but 2 years down the road, it may end up being the smart pick. So I think Higgins should be the pick if he's there at 5, but I also don't think Higgins doesn't seem like a complete surefire star. So if Trotz has a guy that he likes better, maybe there is a reason to pick somebody other than Higgins, but it does seem like that is the most likely scenario if he's there at 5, that he ends up being the Preds pick.
Our buddy Predemption in the YouTube chat throwing this out there, and it is something that I've thought about that is going to be very interesting to see on Friday how it plays out. He says, if the Preds use all 3 of their first-round picks on Friday, I hope they take Blake Fiddler with one of them in their 20s, in the picks in the 20s, the son of Vern Fiddler, obviously. Fiddler, actually, I think it's right in the range where he could go. He's 6'4", and he's a right shot defenseman. and he's not going to help him next year if he gets drafted there. But like I saw also a draft profile thrown out there by The Athletic a couple weeks or last week about what all these teams need. And with the Predators, it was the headline was everything. They need everything. They need defensemen in their pipeline too. And they need like particularly some higher end defensemen in their pipeline. I'm excited about Molendijk. Beyond that, I'm not exactly sure what they've got. I like Gibson, but they could use maybe a guy or two more that are kind of in that profile in their defenseman pipeline. Fiddler could be that guy. I think, in the 20s where the Predators are picking is right around where he could go. I think he's 28th from Bob McKenzie. He's 23rd by Elite Prospects. I think the overall composite ranking, they've got him at 27. So he could be in that range, and he would be, a first-round draft pick who was born in Nashville. I mean, he's going to make some history coming up on Friday.
Preds.
And grew up around the Predators, also spent a lot of time in Dallas when Fiddler was down there. But that could be something that the Predators also do if they use all three of their first-round picks.
Would we have a big issue if they did end up going goalie with one of those later first-round picks? Is that too much of a reach? Because I've seen a couple, or the one in particular, mocked to them in the 20s for some goalie depth given.
I wouldn't hate it,
but
because I guess I wouldn't hate it because you've got 3 first-round picks. I'd probably like to see that more in the second. If you're
okay.
Look, they need a goalie in their pipeline. They do. Like they're going to take at least one.
Yeah, I guess they have. Is it Magnus Krona?
Yeah,
in Milwaukee.
Right. They're going to take a goalie in this draft. I mean, Jeff Kelty and their front office have said that. Like they're not being shy about it. They're going to take a goalie.
We'll have to see how high they decide to do that.
That's the thing. How high is it going to be? And obviously, it wasn't that long ago that they took a goalie in the first round in Yaroslav Askarov, and then have since moved on from him. So they need a goalie. I'm interested to see where exactly that lands. I would probably prefer them to go some combination of centerman at number 5, defenseman with one of those other 2 first-round picks, and then probably another
26.
winger.
Yeah.
So that would be what I would like to see them do. We'll see how the board falls.
And who knows if they make these picks, but having 3 picks from 23 to 34 gives you kind of the flexibility of maybe you can wait on the goalie because it's more likely that those skaters are going to go earlier.
Correct.
So maybe at 34, that's where you end up seeing them look for a goaltender.
Matt from Camden asking if there's any scenario where the Predators could move up to number 3 or number 2 even in this draft. Is there a scenario? Yes. Is it at this point pretty unlikely? I would also say yes. Like the likelihood is they're picking at number 5. I think Matthew Schaefer is going 1 to the Islanders. So then the real question is, what does San Jose want to do after that? Because San Jose needs a defenseman. My advice to San Jose would just be to draft Michael Misa and worry about it later. But at that point, you would have Will Smith, who you drafted in the top 5, obviously Macklin Celebrini, who you drafted number 1 overall, and then you would have Michael Misa. That's 3 really high picks at forward. But, I mean, I would probably do that if I were them, if Schaefer's off the board. But we'll see. We'll see if they decide to move back. I would put it to you this way. Most years, I would say it's almost impossible for the Predators to move up. I'm not going to throw impossible out there this year. I'd still say I'd put it at about a 98% chance they're picking at number 5.
I don't know. Do they have like a draft trade value chart in the NHL like they do for the NFL? Like what would it cost the Preds to move up? Would it be like all 3 of their first round picks to move from 5 to 2?
Yeah, and probably a little bit more. Like it'd probably be more than that. Just depending on who you're dealing with. Like some of it would be like San Jose. How willing are you to get out of there? Like if you're just wanting to get out of there and stockpile some picks, then maybe that would help you. But typically top 5 picks don't get moved around a whole lot just because it's such a crapshoot with the draft that when the top 5 you feel like are more of a sure thing, people tend not to mess with that all that much. Not that they're always right, but it's more of a sure thing, particularly in the NHL, with about the top 8. And then beyond that, it becomes I guess we'll see.
Throwing darts.
Yeah, I mean, that's what happens when you're drafting 17 and 18-year-olds. There's a lot that can
That's a
happen
good
between
point.
17 and 23, right? I mean, there's a lot that could go down that way. 615-737-1025, our phone number. A lot of your thoughts to get to on the Predators draft. We will do that coming up next. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game.
What does number 5 do for you? Where do you head from there?
Well, we're in the process of all the meetings right now upstairs. I sat in with our scouts today. I feel that even at the moving back a couple spots in number 5, we're going to get a good player. I don't have any doubt about that. What it might do, depending on once we get the order, we're probably going to put a couple of plans into place. I'll have to make some phone calls and follow through with some of our plans. So I think when we get through with all the process, we have the combine coming up, as well as some interviews with the players, especially what we think is probably the guys will be in probably the top 10 for sure. We'll do a lot of background checking, do all that. And once we get that in order, we'll try to figure out what everybody else is doing and have a few plans in place to go in the direction we need.
That's Barry Trotz after the NHL draft lottery. Preds picking the number 5 coming up on Friday in the draft. Taking your thoughts on that pick, 615-737-1025. Our phone number, 615-737-1025. I got one texter that says, James Hagen's too little. I think in a previous conversation on DVD, he was talking about he's small and soft like Evangelista. So we'll see what happens on that front. Caleb on the text line says, I just have a feeling Trotz has a big plan up his sleeve, and if he has an opportunity, he's going to do something. That goes back into what we talked about yesterday of what is the plan for Barry Trotz in terms of adding to this group this offseason. I would put it to you this way. I don't think there's any chance that they're moving off number 5. I mean, I guess other than the opportunity to move up, but they're not trading number 5 for help right now. I'll put it to you that way. I would be floored by that. And frankly, I just think that would be really bad.
It would make
idea.
Almost no sense.
Yeah. So I would not do that. I don't anticipate the Predators are going to do that. The other 2 picks in the first round is interesting. I mean, do you really need to make both of those picks? I would say no, you don't if you're the Predators. Now, could you get some help there? If nothing else materializes around you right now, sure, absolutely. But it's not like, those later first round picks are just going to be absolute surefire stars in the NHL. So if the right deal presents itself and you can use those later first round picks as ammunition, maybe to pick up a right shot defenseman or to pick up one of those players that Adam Vingan was talking about earlier that's kind of in that mold of mid-20s, and maybe it hasn't worked out somewhere else, but you can see the talent is just unbelievable and you're taking a risk. Maybe you package some of that together. Maybe there's a discussion that they're having with the team right now that we don't know about, that they're trying to put some package around and they want to use those picks. I don't know. I'm interested to see how that part of it plays out. There's also this draft as a whole, generally speaking, does not seem to be viewed very favorably, very highly. So our teams really looking for more picks at the later part of the first round in this draft? That's a legitimate question. I don't know. I don't know how that's going to work out for the Predators this year.
With the way the Preds are built right now, you kind of have to balance finding a way to make this team competitive next year while also building up the future. And you definitely have to pick somebody in the top 5. I think that's non-negotiable. But do you need 4 picks in the top 34?
That's the question.
I would probably say no. And if there's any way that you could send 1 or 2 of those picks to get somebody who can help you right now, that's probably the right balance in terms of, with as much age and, the contracts you have on the books right now, you do have to find a way to build out this team for this upcoming season. And maybe that's the best ammunition you have to do that. You're not going to use 5. I'm with you there. You can't trade 5. And there's probably not many players out there who are worth the 5th overall pick, but
not the teams are willing to trade.
Right.
No. Yeah.
Exactly. But if you could send 23 and or 26 and or 34 and go get somebody who can help the team right now, I think that would probably be the right balance for Barry Trotz.
Well, and look, if that doesn't materialize and they end up making all those picks, then good for them. That's good. I mean, that's, picking first round players is not a bad thing.
You don't want to force anything for sure.
Right. So you don't want to just trade it for the sake of trading it. But I guess what I'm saying is those later picks in the first round, based on the players who are going to be there, do any of those guys change the equation so much where you're in your prospect pool where you're just like, well, we just have to do it? I think the answer to that is no.
I don't think it turns you into one of the best farm systems in all of hockey. It doesn't make you have this elite prospect pool to take the 25th best player in this class.
Now, number 5 does. Number
Agreed.
5, whether it's Hagens or Frondell, whoever they end up at number 5 is going to be a very good player. And then the question is going to be, okay, exactly how good? That's what it boils down to. But regardless of who they end up with number 5, like with the guys who are going to be available in that range, I think they're going to be getting a pretty good player. But there's levels to it. Like there's a difference between a pretty good player and an elite franchise cornerstone player. And are they getting that? That's going to be the question.
Yeah. And at 5, you're hoping you're going to add the top prospect in your system. Like that should be what happens, is that you go get a guy who immediately becomes the gem of your prospect pool. At 23 and 26, you're probably just adding a bunch more, maybe a little better than lottery tickets, but they're kind of lottery tickets when you're taking them at 17, 18 years old, and they're not considered a generational type player. They're all kind of lottery tickets. Maybe they pan out and end up being great players for you, but more often than not, they either end up just being guys, or some of them may not even make it to the NHL level.
Well, and the bottom line is, and this is true, I think, in every sport, in every draft, I think it's more true when it relates to hockey and baseball specifically. Like you're drafting these kids so young, and there's so many of them that a lot of it really is a crapshoot at some point. Like, the Lightning drafted Nikita Kucherov. I think it was 58th overall. Okay. And he has turned into probably at worst, like the 5th best player in the NHL. Like he's really, really good. And you look at some of the guys that were taken before him, including, I think the Predators took Mika Salamaki in the 2nd round before Nikita Kucherov. Yeah. Kucherov was taken at 58th overall by Tampa in the 2nd round. And at 52 that year, the Predators took Mika Salamaki. And right before Kucherov, like there's a laundry list of guys that you look on the list at and you're like, well, I've never heard of any of those guys. Like, who are these people? But that's what the NHL draft kind of turns into. And number one, you need a good front office and a good scouting staff to be able to identify some of these players. But a lot of this is like, man, there's so much that changes between the time when they're 17, 18 years old and what some of these guys grow into being at 23, 24. And sometimes you hit the jackpot. And the truth of the matter is it's been a long time since the Predators have done that. And they need 2 or 3 of those. Like they need to really hit, obviously, on their number 5 pick overall, but they also need to find somebody later in the draft that ends up being way better than they thought they were going to be.
Yeah, you'd love for the 34th overall pick to 2 years down the road turn into one of the top prospects in hockey. But it doesn't happen very often, but it has happened before. And you're right. In order to build a sustainable championship contender, you do need to hit on some of these lottery tickets and some of these throws at the dartboard that typically a mid-second round pick or an early second round pick isn't going to be a game changer. But when they are, that's how you turn into one of these teams that's contending for the Stanley Cup every year.
We'll be joined by Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports coming up next. We'll get his thoughts on the Titans and all things NFL. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan tonight as the Nashville Sounds take on Jacksonville. Pregame at 5:50, first pitch at 6:05. Coverage also available on the Game Nashville app and at theGameNashville.com. Sounds Baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks and Family Leisure. Robbie Stanley alongside Jake Lyman, Ian Safar here with you on this Tuesday morning. Talking a little NFL, and to help us do that, we head to our 102.5 The Game phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. And welcome in Frank Schwab to the program from Yahoo Sports. Frank, good morning. How are you?
Hey, good. What's going on?
Not a whole lot, man. Appreciate you taking time to be with us this morning. So, Frank, I want to start on the Titans here with you. Obviously, Cam Ward going number 1 overall. And when you're going to a team that is drafting number 1 overall, that means the situation is not overly great around you most of the time. So what do you make of the situation that Cam Ward is walking into? And as you have watched Cam Ward kind of throughout this entire process, what's the type of player that you think the Titans are getting?
Well, first of all, the player, I mean, I really like him. I think that it was weird. I don't know if you guys felt this out there, but just, being from afar, it was weird how little attention he got.
Agreed.
He was so overshadowed in the process by obviously Shedeur, but just everything else. And even I found it so funny on draft night when he's literally walking to the stage and ESPN is saying, well, wait, we got to trade. and Cam Ward got none of his spotlight. And that's just kind of, I mean, it kind of speaks to him as a player too. I mean, as a guy who, as I wrote in my Titans preview, his first college game was in front of like 3,000 fans, and his final game that season was in front of like 800 fans. He's come from basically the bottom. I had no FBS scholarship offers, as everybody knows, and I like that. I think he got lumped in with all of the other quarterbacks in this class. The whole narrative that's not really untrue that, oh, this quarterback class is no good. It's no good. It's no good. Well, that might be true as a whole, but there's one guy who's really, really good. I don't see any reason why Cam Ward couldn't have been a top 5 pick last year when there were all these fantastic quarterbacks in the draft and a lot of them played really well as a rookie. So as a player, I just think I like the fact that Cam Ward had such humble beginnings in his college career. I like everything he's about. I like his skill set. I just think everything. I think he's a good player. I think the Titans got the right player. The situation is not great, obviously. I mean, there's a lot, but you look at it. I was kind of thinking about this before I came on. The offensive line shouldn't be that bad. A lot of first-round picks, a lot of money involved in that offensive line. All of a sudden, Calvin Ridley's. You could have a worse number 1 receiver than Calvin Ridley. Okonkwo's a capable tight end. A couple good running backs. I think a lot of this comes down to Callahan. If he's the coach that Tennessee thought it was getting a year ago, this is his time. You can make excuses and say Will Levis just was this and that, and he wasn't a good fit and all that. But if you're the kind of quarterback whisperer you were sold to be to Tennessee, this is your time to show it. I think it's a big question for one, whether Callahan's the right guy. But if he is, then I think he's going to help Cam Ward get all of everything out of his talent, and which is he's got a ton of talent to offer.
Frank, the AFC South as a whole is a little bit of an enigma. I think obviously Houston is the favorite to win, but the other 3 have a lot of big question marks. How do you sort out the rest of that division heading into this season where, Titans have a new quarterback, Colts have this quarterback competition going on, and who knows what the Jaguars are from year to year, especially with a new GM and a head coach.
Right. And I'm kind of, one of the flags I'm planting this year is on Jacksonville. I think Jacksonville's going to be good. How many times have we seen a team just kind of going through the motions with a coaching staff that's just kind of checked out? Then all of a sudden a new coach comes in with new energy, new ideas, and they take a big jump up. That happened to Washington. I mean, we see it happen many years. That happened in Houston a couple of years ago. Now, those teams hit on a new quarterback. But, they brought in Travis Hunter, who I think is going to help out Trevor Lawrence a ton. I like this Jaguars team. I think they're going to be good. I really do. As long as Trevor stays healthy, this is kind of the Trevor year. Like, if it doesn't happen for Trevor this year, it's just not going to happen. Like, it needs to happen if he's going to ever be a legitimate top 10 quarterback in this league. This is kind of the time for it. And so we'll see. Houston, because part of the reason I like Jacksonville so much is Houston didn't impress me. That second half last year, they were a pretty bad team. Now we forget all about that because they just boat raced the Chargers in the playoffs. I don't know what the Chargers were doing that day. They had no business getting blown out like that. But Houston was a pretty bad team over the second half last year. Houston's got a great defense. I know that. But the offense has some questions. I don't know. I'm just kind of lukewarm on Houston. And then I think the Colts are going to be bad. But I say that, and The Colts were 8-9 last year with some of the worst quarterback play in the NFL. So their floor is pretty high, maybe. So it's an interesting division. It's not a great division by any means, but there are some interesting teams there. And with the Colts kind of being the wild card and all of it, the way I don't know what to do with them. I don't think they're going to be good, but I hate to say this because I really want Anthony Richardson to succeed, but maybe just this Anthony Richardson shoulder injury gives the Colts kind of an out to start Daniel Jones and actually have a viable passing game.
So, Frank, you guys are rolling out your offseason power rankings at Yahoo, and today you wrote about one of the most intriguing teams to me heading into this year, and maybe not even necessarily from like being a Super Bowl competitor or anything like that, but there's a lot of change with the Raiders, and you've got Pete Carroll coming in, you've got Geno Smith coming in at quarterback, obviously Ashton Genty entering the fold there, and the Max Crosby situation is behind them now. So what do you make of kind of the reset with this Raiders franchise and where they're left standing on the other side of it now entering into this season?
Yeah, and I just think that they've just gotten so fed up with losing that they want a professional football team out there, right? Like, because you look at their moves, and they hired who's going to be the oldest coach in NFL history once week one kicks off, and Pete Carroll. They traded for a quarterback who I believe Geno is 35 years old now, who's kind of a middle of the road quarterback, but it's such an upgrade for him from what they had that, okay, I guess I get it. They draft a running back 6 overall. These are the kind of moves you should be making if you feel like, okay, we can contend this year. I think the Raiders ceiling is to be a really good last place team in the AFC West, right? But yep. I just think that they got so sick of just being a laughing stock and a doormat that they just want to just get some form of winning culture there. They're so desperate for just any positive vibes that these were the moves they had to make. Like, Pete Carroll might only coach 2 years. Who knows? I know everybody talks about Pete's energy, and that's very, very true, but he's 74 years old. Like, this isn't I don't think he's going to coach for 5-6 years. We've never obviously seen that this happen before. So, but I think that they were willing to make that trade-off. Okay, Geno might only be our starting quarterback for 2 years. Pete might only be our coach for 2 years. But in that 2 years, maybe we can start to get the ball rolling in a positive direction, because it's been rolling the wrong way for 30 years or so for the Raiders. So, I get it, I guess. It's kind of weird, but they're going to be actually a fun, feisty team. I don't think they're going to be better than 7-8 wins, but 2 great superstar, offensive talents, and Bowers and Genty, and a quarterback who's actually an adult in the room, and they could actually be an interesting team. Although one that I can't get them out of last place in the AFC West. Like, it's a brutal division.
Frank, we were talking earlier in the show about the Patriots, and obviously, a lot of familiarity around here with Mike Vrabel stepping into that job in year one. I thought Drake May was good last year, particularly given the lack of basically having anything around him in that offense. I didn't think he was exceptional or anything, but there seems to me to be a lot of, I guess, hype being the right word on the Patriots heading into this year. What do you make of that and your expectations for them in Vrabel's first year?
Yeah, and I know you guys, because I visit Nashville often. You guys have legal sports betting there, so you can look and see over/under for the Patriots wins this year is 8.5 at MGM, and it's like, all right, this team has won 8 games combined the last 2 years. But I get it. Like, they had Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel should have been the Titans coach for 20 years. Like, I still just shake my head at how that got screwed up. Mike Vrabel's a heck of a coach. Like, I don't like the way the Patriots handled the situation. I thought that Rob Mayo really got the raw end of the deal, and I thought they made a joke out of the Rooney Rule and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, they got one of the best coaches in the NFL. Okay, well, I don't like the process, but they did get Mike Vrabel, who I have a ton of respect for. So he changes that, obviously. Drake May, you talked about him. He really showed a lot. They went out, and I thought, if you were ranking, and I do, ranking who had the best draft and who had the best free agency in the NFL this year, I think the Patriots ranked number 1 in both categories. I thought they spent so much money to fix the defense and got some real impact players on that side of the ball. And then their draft was really, really good. I like everything about their roster building this offseason. So they've upgraded the talent from probably the worst roster in the NFL to a pretty good roster. And they have a really weak schedule this year. So you look at it and you say, okay, how could this team go from 4 wins to 9 or 10 or whatever? But I at least see the path. The talent is just night and day, and the coaching is a huge upgrade. So yeah, I think this Patriots team is going to be pretty good. I don't know if they can get the 9 wins. That's a lot to ask, but it also wouldn't shock me. It's just going to be a different Patriots team than what we've been used to seeing the last couple of years.
Talking NFL with Frank Schwab of Yahoo Sports. Frank, one of the more interesting stories of the offseason is Shamar Stewart with the Bengals and the impasse that they're at. And it just seems like no one wants to blink in that situation. Do you see any light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the Bengals and their first-round pick?
I mean, I assume there has to be. I don't think this is going to be like a season-long holdout or anything. Like, I don't think you get to that point. This is just the Bengals being the Bengals, and they started to shed that reputation of being cheap and antagonizing their players and not being a very, a professional organization a few years ago when they made the Super Bowl. But that was basically because Joe Burrow showed up. They fell in their laps, and they had one of the superstar quarterbacks in the NFL. I don't think the organization has really changed. You see that the Trey Hendrickson standoff, and now you're seeing it with Shamar Stewart, where they're just randomly decided, hey, we're putting this language into our rookie deals now. And Shamar Stewart's like, well, why should I have to deal with that? This hasn't happened before, and I'm not getting anything out of it. I'm not fully on board on Shamar Stewart's side here. He shouldn't be accepting this because it hasn't happened before. So why should he be the guinea pig, right? And for a Bengals team that they missed the playoffs last year with their quarterback playing at an MVP level. That's almost impossible. Yeah. That is almost impossible to do in the NFL. If your quarterback plays as well as Joe Burrow did last year, 100% of the time you should make the playoffs. It is almost inexcusable not to. And what was their problem? It was defense. And now, again, you're antagonizing your first-round pick. You're having a standoff with Trey Hendrickson, who had 17.5 sacks last year. How's the defense getting any better? How's his team getting any better? And if I'm, the bigger picture here is they're picking these small fights and not seeing the big picture of if this was the NBA, Joe Burrow would probably at some point be like, I want out of here. Trade me to the NFL version of the Miami Heat, right? Like I don't know if Joe Burrow's ever going to get to that point where he demands a trade, but he's got to be thinking to himself, what is going on with this organization? I'm kind of saddled with this clown show around me. It's just a bad offseason look for the Bengals, who did the right thing paying T. Higgins and paying Jamar Chase finally, and now you just take a big step back with this stuff. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what the point here is.
Well, Frank, really good stuff, man. We're really appreciative of your time. You're kind to join us, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks so much for your perspective.
Absolutely, guys. Have a great rest of the week.
Absolutely. You as well. Frank Schwab from Yahoo Sports, our guest on Robby and Rexrode. Lots to react to there from Frank. We will do that coming up next. But first, I got a 4-pack of tickets to give away to the FIFA Club World Cup match at Geodis Park coming up this Thursday night. Al Hilal taking on CF Pachuca at 8 o'clock. Be caller number 4, 615-737-1025, 615-737-1025. Caller number 4, a 4-pack of tickets to the FIFA Club World Cup match at Geodis Park coming up on Thursday night. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Join us this Friday as we broadcast live at the Duncan Grand reopening in Hermitage at 5205 Old Hickory Boulevard. Starting at 8 a.m., the first 100 people in line will win free coffee for 100 days. Plus 102.5 The Game will have your chance to win tickets to an upcoming Nashville concert as well. Also on Friday's a big day. Join us at Bridgestone Arena for a party like no other and celebrate the future of Smashville at the Nashville Predators 2025 NHL Draft Party. More details at theGameNashville.com/events. And you can catch coverage that I will be a part of alongside Max Hers starting at 6 o'clock on Friday night. Draft night in Smashville, powered by the International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local 429. So looking forward to that. We talked about that earlier in the show, but Friday night at 6 o'clock, we will have your NHL draft coverage here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Appreciate Frank Schwab for being with us in the last segment there. Frank Schwab seems to be very high on Cam Ward, so good to see on that front. We'll see how that ends up playing out. And I do think Frank Schwab is representative of how most of the national media feels about the Mike Vrabel discussion around here. I think most of the national media says, Titans, you're absolute morons for firing Mike Vrabel. Now, I said it yesterday or earlier in the show today. I said it in the immediate aftermath of it. I would not have fired Mike Vrabel. I think Mike Vrabel had proven enough at that point where he still needed to be the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. I also don't know that I would go as far to say that he should be the head coach for 20 years, but I get the point that Frank was putting out there.
Yeah, when it happened, and still looking back, I don't think it was the right decision for the Titans to fire Mike Vrabel. I think he deserved at least one more year to try and sort things out. But the national media wasn't listening to Mike Vrabel every single day while he lost 18 of his last 24. And he kept the same shtick that he used when they were winning. And it was, I think Titans fans liked the Mike Vrabelisms and all that stuff when the Titans were playing in AFC championship games and the number one seed in the AFC. But when you go 6-18, you can't keep saying the same things. Coach better, play better. And I think it got a little bit old and a little bit tired, but no, I'm with you. I think there's a middle ground between, should the Titans have fired him? Probably not. But should he be the Titans head coach for 20 years? I don't know if that was in the cards either.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. Look, I think Vrabel's a good coach, and I think he will probably do a good job in New England. Now, is that going to result in a Super Bowl? That I have no idea.
Is he Bill Belichick? Probably not.
Probably not. And frankly, Drake May is nice. Frankly, Drake May is not Tom Brady. So that combo is going to be difficult to replicate in that place ever again. So I think if you're a Patriots fan, you have to understand that heading into all this. Now, the question is can Vrabel in the next couple of years here, can he get them in the conversation with Baltimore and Buffalo and Kansas City and those type of teams? That's what I don't know. And really, most of that's going to come down to how good is Drake May. That's what it's going to come down to. We heard Frank Schwab talk about it. It is, the more you think about it, the more it's kind of amazing that the Bengals missed the playoffs last year, given how good Burrow was. He's right. That should be impossible.
He had MVP
in the NFL
numbers.
To miss the playoffs when your quarterback is playing that well. But that's for Vrabel. That's the standard for Brian Callahan, Cam Ward. That's what you're going up against. You're going up against Mahomes and Josh Allen and Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. And those guys aren't going anywhere anytime soon. And you have to go through them, not around them.
Yeah. I mentioned it yesterday that the AFC and the NFC might as well be different leagues, because in the AFC, it's all about the quarterback. I think it's safe to say that 5 of the top 6 quarterbacks in the league are in the AFC. Maybe you could make an argument that Jaden Daniels could be 6 instead of a Justin Herbert or something like that. But the top 4, I think pretty safely, are Mahomes, Allen, Burrow, Jackson, all in the AFC. So if you don't have the quarterback, Mike Vrabel can be the greatest coach and, get the most out of his team every time they go out on the field. But if Drake May is not the guy, they're not going to be playing in the Super Bowl anytime soon.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, that's what it is. And same thing with Cam Ward. Cam Ward, right? Eventually, can he give you that level of play or close to that level of play? He doesn't have to be Mahomes specifically or specifically Josh Allen. But he's got to be like in that ballpark, or you've just got to build an unbelievable roster around him. That's your path if you're the Titans.
You have to have the ability to play against those guys in a playoff situation and not feel like you have a significant disadvantage at quarterback.
Right. You're totally outclassed.
Like that, as good as Ryan Tannehill was, Ryan Tannehill against Patrick Mahomes, Ryan Tannehill against Joe Burrow in those playoff games, and Ryan Tannehill against Lamar Jackson the year before, that was always going to be the disadvantage, is that the Titans did not have a game changer at quarterback who could go out there and win you the game when you needed it in the final minutes. If Cam Ward can just be that, he doesn't have to be the league MVP, but he has to be in that conversation if the Titans are going to have a chance to make it to the Super Bowl during his tenure.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you're building towards. And look, I think we're a long way away. Well, I say a long way away. In today's NFL, it seems like it's getting shorter every year.
Yeah.
But we're not gonna know that about Cam Ward after year one. We're probably not gonna know that about Drake May after year two. Probably.
You have a better idea after 2 years.
You have a better idea after 2 years. And I think everybody feels like they know it right now with Jayden Daniels. We'll see. Like I'm interested in year two. Does he follow it up?
Well, CJ Stroud after year two.
Exactly.
Right. What do we feel about that?
Exactly.
Is he going to pull another year two, a year one, or neither?
The talk about CJ Stroud was that he was a top 5 quarterback in the NFL after year one.
And he was not.
He was not.
He was still good. And I think there's a lot that fell apart around him.
He's still their franchise quarterback.
Right.
But he's not in the tier with Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Burrow.
Right. And that part of it, can you replicate? I mean, that's part of why these guys we're talking about are so great. Is they not only replicate it year after year, they build on it. Like Lamar Jackson is getting better. Josh Allen is getting better.
Yep.
And Joe Burrow is getting better. And that's a crazy thing to think about with how good they've been.
And that's why you take a chance on Cam Ward and turn down that trade package from the Giants. Because if you have any chance to get one of those guys, you don't know when the next chance is going to come. So you got to take it.
That's going to do it for us today here on the program. Chasing Big Joe coming up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.